Welcome back to the All About You podcast. Now, I have a question for you. Are you interested in astrology? Do you look at your star sign and think, yep, that's definitely me, or no, some of it is, some of it isn't? Well, my guest today is Andrea, and Andrea was on the podcast not that long ago talking about the pros and cons of AI. So, Andrea, welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be back. Very different topic.
Well, astrology. If you say to somebody, what's your star sign? They will tell you. Okay, so do you think you are true to your star sign? And they will say, oh, hell yeah, I do this, this, and this. Other people say, no, I'm so unlike it, even if they are a twin or if they were born in the star sign as another family member. They may have completely different personalities. So, Andrea, we've got a lot to unpick here with astrology. So, where do we start?
I would start with saying that everyone knows their sun sign. So there are 10 major planetary bodies that are important in astrology, okay? And the sun is just one of them. And the sun is very general. It's a very general sign, but it's the easiest one for people to figure out because it's just what day of the month you're born. Okay, that falls into whatever sign. So, okay, you're a Gemini or whatever. So it's easier. That really came about, people following their sun sign really came about with when the printing press became popular and the newspapers were looking for columns to add to their newspapers to get people into reading their newspapers. And it's much easier to find someone's sun sign than to find what I find more important is your rising sign. So in order to find out what your rising sign is, you need to know what time you were born and where you were born. Because the rising sign changes every, I don't even know, I think it's every hour or something, because it's the sign that is in the eastern horizon the moment you take your first breath. Because the earth is moving, that sign changes pretty quickly. And so where your rising sign, or it's also called your ascendant sign, is, that sign then maps out your entire birth chart. And your birth chart is a glimpse of the entire sky the moment you took your first breath. Your rising sign then rules, there's something called houses. So I can go into the details of where these houses came from. But basically, there's 12 houses, and your first house is ruled by your ascendant. I actually brought up your birth chart so that we could go into that in more details, but I can give more of the history of where astrology came from in the first place. The framework that we use today, especially in Western astrology, originated in ancient Mesopotamia. It was around the 5th century BCE. And this was a major development in astronomy and astrology because the Babylonians of the time they basically needed a system for practical reasons so that they can track the movements of the sun and the moon and the planets. And so it became a coordinate system for them, and it's a celestial map. In 5th century BCE, we didn't have light pollution, so we could see, if it wasn't a cloudy day, we could see all the stars in the sky. Also, the moon does affect how much we can see because full moons are very bright, so they cover more of the stars. From our view on Earth, the planets travel along the same narrow band in the night sky, and this band is called the ecliptic. And it's a circular path that the sun visually carves from sunrise to sunset to sunrise again. So it's the whole loop around. So you can think of the ecliptic as a sky road and the planets as a vehicle that travel across it. But unlike the planets, the stars do not move in relation to each other, so astronomers call them fixed. And the fixed stars scattered across the ecliptic form basically the scenery, and they provide landmarks to help us identify where the planets are in their travels. The stars arranged along the ecliptic belong to the zodiac family of constellations. So it takes the sun a full year to go through all 12 of these constellations. And these constellations then match Aries, Taurus, Gemini, all of those. So based on these constellations, astrologers in ancient Mesopotamia, they divided the ecliptic into 12 equal segments of 30 degrees. So these 12 equal segments form the signs of the zodiac. The zodiac signs are linked to the 12 constellations, but the constellations and the zodiac signs aren't like the constellations aren't the exact same size. So basically, this is all very theoretical. They came up with this pattern to map out the sky, but it's not like we can look at the sky and be like, oh yes, there, like it is matching exactly to where we say we are, especially because the earth has this wobble, right? And so you'll get a lot of like people that like hate astrology be like, but the earth has been wobbling on its axis since over 2,000 years ago when this framework was created. And so you're not actually an Aries, you're a Pisces, because it is true that every about 72 years our angle changes by like one degree, and over 2,000 years that's now amounted that we're now these constellations are in a different spot. But we have to remember that I see astrology as like one of the biggest studies in like sociology. They were basically mapping out the seasons. So it's not so much what's happening in the sky, it's what's happening on Earth in these seasons. They chose a specific time of year to start basically the map. It's a time of year where it like everyone on Earth feels this effect. It happens on the spring equinox, so it's a spring equinox in the northern hemisphere, because this all comes from the northern hemisphere. So it's a spring equinox in the northern hemisphere, and that is 0 degrees of Aries. So Aries is our first sun sign because it is the sign that brings in the year, starting with spring. So it's the day of the year that the sun and the darkness is the same, right? We have the sun is out for as long as is at the same amount of time that there is nighttime in that day. And so that's the day that we start the astrology. But again, this is all theoretical. So, and I like to look at it as kind of like self-help, in that it's not a science. It's more of like anything you do with self-help. Take what resonates with you and leave what doesn't. Okay, like none of this is like set in stone. It doesn't map out exactly how you're going to turn out. Environmental environmental experiences are going to affect differently how you react to things. All of this means is that you might be prone to certain attitudes, or you might be prone to certain views of the world, but it doesn't mean that that's set in stone. You like anything, even in like psychology, you can work through maybe any bad habits you might have to make yourself a better person. So I kind of see it like in like the self-help kind of way. I'm not saying that, oh, because I'm in Aries, I'm impulsive, so I'll never fix my impulsivity. Like, I will always just be impulsive. No, I actually hate people that use astrology in that way, and I've known people that are like, I'm just a Libra, so I have to flirt with everybody. And I'm like, well, you don't actually. So it's all about like seeing it as like, oh, I am prone to that. Maybe that's not really nice to be around, so maybe I should work on that. So that's a long-winded explanation to kind of explain like where it originates, but also how I see it.
It's very interesting that you said it basically starts with Aries, because I think we're very much, well, the beginning of the year is the 1st of January, so we need to look at the star sign for that. So the fact that, no, it's due the spring equinox, I think is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, well, because this calendar that we have currently, I mean, I don't know the details, but it's much younger than this astrology that was created. And so humanity has always mapped itself around, especially in the northern hemisphere, we have the 4 seasons. It doesn't make sense to say that the year starts in the dead of winter. January 1st is the middle of winter. We are about to get much colder. Things are about to get much harsher, living conditions wise, in January and February. So it doesn't make any sense to say that that's the start of the year. If you think about people that are living their lives based on what they're growing, when they can spend time outside, when they're not struggling for food, it would be spring. Like spring is what brings life, right?
And that's it. If you think about it, spring, it's like, we celebrate spring. It's the rebirthing.
Mm-hmm.
We're all coming out of hibernation.
Exactly.
So, yeah, that makes absolute sense now that you've explained it. That is the beginning of the new year in respect of everything springing to life after hibernation.
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, that's why there are so many holidays in that time of year. I mean, we're in Valencia where fallas are a big thing. Fallas, the last day of fallas falls on the spring equinox. Like, it's not exactly here, it's March 19th, and the spring equinox can go from the 19th to the 20th to 21st, depending on the year and what that celebration originates from. And it's not the only civilization that has some sort of celebration of like, okay, winter's done, let's burn something to get rid of that winter energy and bring in spring. Like even Easter, it falls around that time because it used to be a pagan holiday that was adopted by the Romans as they were spreading Christianity, and they were like, yeah, of course, we'll keep your celebrations, but that now we're celebrating a saint or Jesus Christ. But it's all around spring.
So makes sense now that you've explained it. Well done, Andrea.
Yeah, thanks. I love this. I love following the seasons and following Earth's patterns. And I think it's unhealthy of us to pretend like we can be as productive as possible all year round, especially in the dead of winter. Like, there's nothing I want more in winter than to just be in my bed and be cozy and eating a lot of food and just like slowing down everything I do. But the world that we live in requires us to be like, no, you still have to go to work. You still have to run around.
That's really interesting what you're saying, because for me, round about January, we get, okay, new year, new you. What are your goals? You're going to run a marathon, you're going to lose weight, you're going to learn a language. I gave that up years ago. For me, I prefer September, the academic year, because traditionally July, August are holiday months. You've got time to sit and go, okay, what have I done this year? What do I want to do? And to me, it's more exciting. Oh, I can buy a new notebook. I can buy some new pens and pencils. For me, my planning for what I want to achieve or things I want to do is September.
Yeah.
Because you see everywhere you go, magazines, social media, what are your goals? What are you planning? You've got to step it up in January. You've had Christmas. You've had New Year. And everyone's exhausted, got no money. Yet you're saying to them, right, now you've got to sit down and with any energy you've got left, plan what you're going to do for the next 12 months. It makes no sense.
Yeah, and you're not the only one. There are other civilizations that see the fall as the start of the year. So, it's different. It always depends on your weather patterns, how the food grows in your area. It's different for everybody. And I was, right after I finished schooling, I became a teacher. So for many, many years, my calendar year was also start in the fall, you end in the summer, and then you have summer to like rest, and then you start again in the fall. So I completely understand that as well, and I do feel like that even makes more sense than starting your new year in the dead of winter. How many people do you know that set a New Year's resolution and then by mid-January they're like, oh, I failed?
I hate the expression, but it's a given, isn't it? The gyms are full, and give it 4 or 5 weeks and they would all have disappeared, and you can get back to
But
normal.
It's not their fault.
Yeah.
It's not their fault. It's winter. It's not the time to start anything new.
What else can we look at? I mean, you've taught us that the first star sign is really Aries. We now looked at the traditional starting the new year in January is not a great idea because energy levels, as you say, where we live, the food we grow. What else, or what other impact is there that astrology has on our lives.
Yeah, so I mentioned this a little bit before, but basically, like I said, like it's a large study in sociology. These are things that have been tracked for millennia in behaviors of like humans, even just like our interactions with animals and our ecosystems. It's not that because Aries is like in the sky right now and the sun is entered Aries, that's why you are this, and this, and this way. It's more that, well, you were born in the spring. So because you were born in the spring, you're more like you were learning to walk. The way you interact with the world depends on what time of year you were born. And so they have done studies that show like babies that were born in the winter might have certain personality traits, or I don't even know if it's personality traits, but they might have certain traits because they're born when it's really dark out. Okay, so they don't get as much time outside to practice their first steps or any of that, or like their family's more inside and so they don't get as much outside time, and so it really affects how we develop. And it's not so much because the stars are in where they are or because this planet is in this location. It's more because this is a pattern that was studied for hundreds and hundreds and now thousands of years, that they've been able to follow these, track these patterns and be like, oh, the last time this was in this part of the sky, this was happening in the world. And now we're looking around and we're seeing, oh, this is happening again. And a great example is right now I'm trying to remember which sign it is. I think it's Pluto's in Aquarius. So everyone's talking about like the age of Aquarius. I'm pretty sure it's Pluto. But basically, we've now had a planet return into Aquarius, and to this sign of Aquarius is a sign of the people. They're also kind of like a weird sign. They're kind of like an alien sign. They always think that they're different from everybody else, but they're all about people as well, and like community and activism. About every 250 years, because Pluto's such a slow moving planet, it's so far away from us, it enters back into a sign that it was in before. And if we look at 250 years ago, what was happening in the world was there was the French Revolution, the US was having their civil war, and now, I don't know if you've noticed, but there is a lot of tension in the world right now.
I was talking to somebody yesterday about alternative therapies, and I was saying reality is not that great at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we had a good laugh over that one. I'm just actually looking up on here about full moon and new moon rituals.
Mm-hmm.
Our new moon is beginnings, planting, and curating direction. Mm-hmm. And setting your intention. Mm-hmm. And full moon rituals is release, clarity, and completion. Are you into any of that?
Absolutely. So, yes, the new moon is basically, we don't see the moon in the sky. It's being blocked behind the sun, so we don't see it. And if you think about new beginnings, the start of things, a lot of the times you're in the dark, right? When you're starting something brand new, you're in the dark. If you even think about like a seed needs to be planted in soil. It's in the dark. That's kind of that's the best way to think of the new moon. It's that seed that you're planting in that darkness, and it's an intention that you want to bring about. So it brings a quality of emergence and like youthful curiosity. The full moon is halfway through the cycle. So a lot of people do think about it as like a release, but I like to use the full moon as a check-in. It's kind of like the peak of the energy. So the full moon is now opposite of the sun. So it's the brightest point. It's the brightest point that we see that whole face of the moon. So it's kind of like the peak experience and the culmination. And it's when we get to enjoy the fruits of our labor. if you put in the labor from that first seed that you planted, you use that as your energy of like, okay, it's a new moon. What do I want to work on this month? What is something that you would like to work on in a month, Sheila?
It's to do with, 28, 30, 31 days. It's a cycle. It's quite a small period of time to say, okay,
Exactly.
this month I want to make more of an effort to drink more water.
Mm-hmm.
Or this month I really want to get my CV done. Small daily goals or a big goal. Okay, this month, this is my number one thing. So I love this. I mean, a lot of people will look at sort of full moon, new moon rituals like, oh my God, you'll be dancing naked round a fire and da-da-da. No, I think it's about reviewing where you're going.
Absolutely. And it also, I like to use that as a general framework, right? We have our new moon and our full moon, and that's the energy that they bring. But then I also bring in what planet is interacting with the moon at that moment in time. And so if we have a new moon and it is in Pisces, okay? So the moon and Pisces love each other. They love to be together. So that's a nice, like, cozy new moon. That's a nice time to start something new. But sometimes the new moon is in a sign, it's in a sign that it doesn't love being in, right? So let's say Aries. I keep going back to Aries because that's my sign. But Aries is a fire sign. It's kind of a tough sign. Its ruling planet is Mars, which is the planet of war. So it is it's not very moon energy. And so if there's a new moon in Aries, it's not as cozy as the new moon in Pisces. And Pisces is a water sign. Pisces is a bit creative. They like to think about like dreams. It's a very dreamy sign. But when the new moon is in Aries, it's like there's a fire lit under your butt. And now it's like it's not as cozy as that new moon in Pisces. It is now okay, I need to take action. Aries is a sign of action, courage, impulsivity. And so if the new moon is in Aries, for example, you want to take that as like, okay, what is like a big thing I've been avoiding, but I can get done in this upcoming month? Like, what is that thing that I need to work on and work towards? And this energy in Aries is gonna give you that push that you need. So not all new moons are created equally. It depends on what sign they're in and also what planets are interacting with them.
Andrea, I love to learn, but which star sign is it in? Is it going to be the one, come on, we got to get cracking month? Or is it, okay, this is a calmer month, maybe a little bit more reflective, maybe a little bit more self-care to yourself, a little bit calmer? And my God, this education is amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, and you also want to think about when if there's a lunar eclipse or a solar eclipse that's going to fall on either a new moon or a full moon. And when there's an eclipse, you kind of don't want to work with it at all. Because an eclipse is a time of reflection. If you think about what an eclipse is, it's a moment where the light is being blocked off. Light is being covered. And usually in those moments, in eclipse moments, there's a lot of energy of what is going to be brought up to the surface. What is being hidden? What are we going to find out in this moment? So you don't really want to work with that energy. In my house, there's no bad astrology. But there is astrology that it's all about knowing how to work with it. So if there's an eclipse, whether it's a lunar eclipse or a solar eclipse, I don't do any sort of ritual in those moments. I kind of take those moments as a moment of rest and reflection. Reflection especially. If you don't take the thing with astrology and what people call bad astrology, which I think is a good segue to one of the questions that you had asked about retrograde, is that there's no bad astrology. It's all about the lessons that we can get out of this. So if you spend a lifetime avoiding any lessons, those lessons are going to get harder and harder and harder the deeper you go into life. If you take an eclipse and you ignore it completely, any sort of reflection you could have had and then something you could have learned from, you've missed it. Now, the next time around, that eclipse is going to feel harder and harder. There are times when people are like, oh wow, this either eclipse or a retrograde, oh, I felt it so bad, or like this full moon was really intense. That can be, what can you go back and reflect on? Like, what was happening? Why was it intense? What was going on? What can you learn from that? What can you decipher? Like, maybe someone hurt your feelings, okay? And that sucked. How did you get to the point for that person to hurt your feelings? What boundaries did you not have? Yeah, like how were you also a part of that, right? Because if anything happens, it's not always, especially if it's like in an interpersonal relationship, it's not ever going to be one-sided. There's always two sides of things. So what could you have done differently? Or why does this keep happening? Depending also on your chart, things can affect you more than it affects other people, depending on what planets are in what houses and what signs and what they're ruled by. And we can get into a little bit of that when we look at your chart as well.
I mean, I know astrology is not everyone's cup of tea.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you mention it, you get a lot of eye rolling, hocus pocus. But for those of us that are interested in it, the way I'm looking at this now, this is Mother Nature's way of guiding you through a 12-month cycle, saying these things are going to be in place. This is the month where you need to step it up and think, okay, what have I been procrastinating on or dragging my feet on? This is the month where, okay, I've got to calm down, rest a bit more and reflect. Following this 12-month cycle is just Mother Nature taking you through, I don't want to say the highs and the lows, but the things you need to pay attention to move you forward, the things that, you can be a little bit calmer about. I think this is fascinating.
Yeah,
this is more than Sagittarius, Capricorn and Aries, isn't it? This is great. But going back a bit, I don't really know anything about Mercury retrograde, apart from the fact that people say never make any life-changing decisions. In other words, never get married on that date. Do not sign a work contract or a contract for a home. Can you tell us a little bit about what Mercury... It comes across as being very negative. That's all I really know.
And so, again, in my point of view, there's never any bad astrology. There is astrology that you might want to pay more attention to and be more careful around. But I will never tell someone never get married on that date, because I'm going to go back a little bit to explain what retrograde is. Everything we're talking about right now is based on Earth's point of view, right? We're not using the sun as the center. We're using us as the center of all of this, because it's how the stars and the planets are moving from our point in the universe. When retrograde is happening, basically what happens is, because all the planets move in different speeds and they're at different distances, there is a planet like Mercury. Mercury is the fastest moving planet that we have, because it's the one that's closest to the sun. So it is whizzing around the sun very quickly. Okay, it's moving much faster than us. When Mercury enters our skies, we see it go in one direction. But then we're moving at the same time. We're also moving in the sky. And so what ends up happening is that at some point, it looks like Mercury is now going the other way. It's going back the other way. And it's no longer going in the trajectory it's supposed to go, quote unquote. It is now going backwards. That is what a retrograde is. And it's only the perception that it's going backwards, because we're also moving in the sky. And then once we get back to a certain point, then we see Mercury moving back in the trajectory it's supposed to do that. Mercury retrograde, because Mercury moves so quickly, is our fastest moving planet, it is in retrograde like 3 to 4 times a year. If you think about that, Mercury's not that big of a deal, because it's happening all the time. It's more of a time because Mercury represents communications, travels, everyday tasks. That's why we talk about it more, because communication is very important for us as humans. Traveling is important, and everyday tasks is every day. These things kind of get a little disoriented and stalled when Mercury is retrograde. This is a great time for you to review and revise and like parse through your plans. So it's not that don't make plans. It's more about that you want to double check, triple check. If you're gonna sign a contract, I've signed a contract during Mercury retrograde. It's not that you need to stall your life when Mercury is in retrograde because it's about 4 weeks. And then if you include the pre-shadow phase and the post-shadow phase, it's like 6 weeks, 3 to 4 times a year. There's only 52 weeks in the year. You
That's
can't.
a fair chunk, isn't it?
Yeah, you can't pause your life every single time Mercury is in retrograde. Mercury retrograde wants you to do is take your time reading through those contracts. If you're gonna travel, just make sure you pack earlier than you normally do. Make sure you have everything you need. Triple check your passport. Make sure it's not going to expire. It just wants you to be more careful and intentional about these things that you need to do, especially when it comes to communication, travel, and your everyday tasks.
Which makes total sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's what you were saying. It's giving Mother Nature's way of giving us a way to like reflect and really think about what you're doing. Be intentional about what you're doing. Is that really something you want to do? Does that wording make sense? Do you want to sign that? It's not so much like never sign this. It's more, are you sure?
So rather than seeing it as something negative, it can be, this is a period where maybe instead of just rushing through things, I need to, okay, let's really look at this. Let's really focus on this, which is not a bad thing with the speed we're currently living through life.
Exactly.
So I don't think that's a bad thing at all. In fact, I think that's a real positive thing. This is really the scary bit then, because you have done my chart.
Okay, well, I was about to say, if we look at where Mercury is in your chart, right? So the planets all fall somewhere on everyone's chart, and they're going to fall in a different part. And if we look at where Mercury falls in your chart, it is also in the sign of Sagittarius, and it's in your 6th house. So I'll go back in a moment to talk about what the houses are, but I'll just tell you now that Mercury is in your 6th house of work, health, and pets. When Mercury's in retrograde, you might want to think about, okay, I gotta be more careful about what I'm doing at work. I got to be focused on my health, making sure, am I drinking enough water this month? Am I getting all the nutrients I need? Am I having balanced meals? Am I exercising? How are my pets doing? So work, health, and pets are 6th house is about. And so whenever Mercury is in retrograde, you want to think, okay, like, let me make sure I'm good. But also you want to think about sign Mercury is traveling through. That's something you want to think about during Mercury retrograde. But also, depending on what sign Mercury is going through at the moment, or especially when it's in retrograde, but basically, what house is that sign in your chart? And then each house represents a different part of your life. And then you want to focus on that house and like that part of your life whenever Mercury is in retrograde in that sign. Let me explain a little bit about the houses. So if we remember the 12 equal parts that the sky was split into, and that is now our map, right? Every one of the 12 has 30 degrees of the sky. Whenever we have a planet going through that sign, it's in your house. It's in that house. So each house is numbered 1 through 12. So your rising sign chooses what your first house is. So everyone's houses are different unless you have the same rising sign. So your rising sign, your ascendant, is Cancer. Okay, so that is your ascendant sign. Anyone else that has the ascendant sign Cancer also has Cancer as the ruler of the first house. And then each house, up to 12, represents a different part of your life. So your first house is your house of you, who you are. It's your motivation for living life. Your second house is the house of assets, resources, talents. Your third house is communication, daily rituals. Your fourth house is your parents, your caregivers, your foundations, your home. Your fifth is pleasure, romance, creative energy. Your sixth house is your house of work, health, and pets. So that's where your house that we mentioned earlier for Mercury, but it's also where your sun sign is. And that house is ruled by Sagittarius. So then, because your sun sign is in the sixth house, that means that your sun is Sagittarius, and the Sagittarius rules that whole house. So the energy of Sagittarius is in charge of that house of work, health, and pets. I'm not going to go through all 12 houses, but I do want to tell you about the big three. So everyone talks about the big three when it comes to astrology. So it's like you'll meet someone new and they'll be like, "Oh, what's your big three?" It's your sun sign, your rising sign, and your moon sign. They reveal the central threads of your personality and your potential, and that's why people focus on those. But that doesn't mean that the other signs don't affect who you are. But let's focus on the big three for you, and we'll go through what they mean. So your ascendant or your rising sign is a sign that was on the eastern horizon the moment of your birth. So we talked about that a little bit earlier. For you, your ascendant sign is Cancer. So I went to my favorite astrologer's website, and I was just like, all right, what does it mean to have your ascendant in Cancer? What does that, how does that affect you? And I'm just going to read what I got from her website. So the website is channy.com, and the astrologer's name is Channy Nicholas, and I think she's fantastic. She's great. So this is what she says. If your ascendant is in Cancer, the moon is your ruling planet, which means you'll want to be known for your ability to care for your cohorts, friends, and family members, initiating them into the realms of the heart. This rising sign is driven to remember the tender trivia about those they love. Have a big smile on my face because I just like, what is this podcast called?
All About You.
All About You. What are you doing? You're collecting the tender trivia about the people in your life. And when I read this last night, I was like, oh, I love Sheila. So a Cancer ascendant rejoices in recalling how their dear ones take their tea, feel about their parents, or like to recharge their batteries. While others may interpret your style as simply compassionate, there is a strong streak of tenaciousness at play here as well. This is a placement that knows how to grip memories, histories, and/or resentments tightly in its claws. Taking time to nurture yourself too will keep you sparkly, vibrant, and able to show up for those around you, resentment-free.
Okay, cool.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah. I think that is. I must admit, I do remember little details. Somebody will tell me something like, "Oh, I'm going to the dentist." And okay, oh, how was your appointment with the dentist? How did you remember that? Yeah, that's very much me.
Yeah. But then it also points out the darker side of that. You want to make sure that you also give that to yourself, because if you're not taking care of your needs and what makes you happy and cozy and how you take your tea, or just even reminding yourself that you want to have a tea every day at a certain time. If you don't do that for yourself, then when you do it for others, a resentment might grow. So that's kind of like, it also reflects on like how you can grow with this knowledge.
Yeah, that makes sense, definitely.
Okay, and then you have your sun and your moon. So your sun illuminates your sense of purpose and where you shine in your life. And it can shed light on what you're here to do and how you're meant to do it. So your sun sign is the sign that you probably already know. It is your Sagittarius, right? So your Sagittarius, and this is from thechanny.com. This is what it says. The sun passes through Sagittarius from November 22nd to December 21st every year, though the exact dates will vary. If Sagittarius is your sun sign, you will likely be philosophical, confident, and optimistic. Because expansive Jupiter is your ruling planet, go big or go home is your motto. You will shine the brightest when you're free to seek answers to life's deepest questions, however you see fit, especially through traveling the globe, acquiring certificates and degrees, or gushing over the wonders of nature. It's easy for your innate enthusiasm to get the best of you, so cultivating a sense of restraint will keep you from exaggerating or coming off as insensitive. When you're able to chart your course, you become a role model to others, demonstrating how to treat life as a thrilling adventure, which, with you around, it's sure to be.
Interesting.
So, I mean, I don't know how much traveling you've done, but you don't live in your home country.
No.
So,
No.
I found that interesting as well, and I mean, even just with this podcast, the philosophical, like, confident optimism is also, like, not everyone can start a podcast. Not everyone has that confidence to even hear themselves, like, recorded. I like that. I think you're optimistic. Not that I spent too much time with you, but from what I...
Yeah, I would like to think so, definitely. Yeah.
How did you feel about that?
I think that's quite good, actually. I think it's because often you read and it says, oh, Sagittarians are adventurous. I'm like, oh, I don't think I'm adventurous at all.
Mm.
You know, I need to know, rather like other people, oh, I'm backpacking so-and-so and I'll organise a hotel when I get there. I always say, no, I need to know where I'm going to plug my hairdryer in. I'm just not adventurous in that respect at all.
Yeah.
So that always comes up with Sagittarian. I'm like, hell no, that's not me.
Yeah.
Give me an itinerary from dawn till dusk and I'm a happy bunny.
It's, if you think about what your rising sign says, and that's why when I started this podcast, I said, I think your rising sign is the most important one.
Yeah.
So I am an Aries, but my moon is also an Aries. So my sun is an Aries, my moon is an Aries, my Mercury is an Aries. So I have 3 signs that are in Aries. So yes, I feel a lot like an Aries. Sorry, I have 3 planets that are in Aries. I also have 3 planets in Capricorn, and Capricorn's my rising sign. And I strongly feel like a Capricorn. The thing is, both Aries and Capricorn are cardinal signs, so they also have similar energy. So there's things that overlap that I always thought were Aries energy, and then I look back and I'm like, oh, that was very Capricorn. I feel like the Cancer really, really spoke to who you are more than the Sagittarius. So yes, the Sagittarius, you know, there's some things there. But when I was reading the Cancer for your rising sign, I was like, oh, Sheila, I love that.
I mean, I think as well, you know, it's like, okay, what's your star sign? Oh, you're this, also you're da-da-da. Mm-hmm. We're just looking at the star sign. You are peeling back this onion to houses where you are in the solar system, the planet. It's not just a Sagittarian is an event, because this is fascinating.
Yeah. Okay, so for the last one, the moon represents your body, emotions, and daily life. It can highlight what you need to feel secure and the daily habits you gravitate toward as you live out your purpose. So your moon is in Leo. With moon in Leo, attention, applause, and affirmation are your preferred forms of self-care. You have a deep emotional need to let your gifts sparkle, to claim a stage for your talents, and to be acknowledged for your strut down the catwalk. People with this moon sign, I'm laughing for the listeners out there, Sheila's cracking up about this. People with this moon sign radiate an allure, but not every form of celebration is good for the soul. If you were ever ashamed for craving attention, or if you experience an overbearing caregiver, you might have a complicated relationship with praise. With this lunar placement, it's important to cultivate the adoring audience within.
Very interesting.
Did anything come up for that one?
Yes, it did, but it was quite personal, so I'm not going to cover it in this. But yeah, I'm definitely sort of nodding my head as you were reading that. Mm-hmm. I think this is such a fascinating conversation because astrology is just so vast. Mm-hmm. And I know in this short period of time we've been talking, you have peeled back an awful lot of layers, mm-hmm. whereas it's not just, this is your star sign, you're this type of person, you're that. It's incredible. I'm just absolutely fascinated, and I'm so looking forward to listening back at this podcast.
Yeah.
Because you've just given us so much information, Andrea.
I could sit here for another 5 hours. There's so much information about this.
I think we need to have you back.
Okay.
Andrea, anything you want to add before we wrap up this conversation? I think we're definitely going to come back and revisit this.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just want to emphasize that, like, remember that, like, sensationalism sells. So don't let these, like, articles that are like, it's Mercury retrograde, like, watch out, get to you. Like, don't, like, those, they're just trying to get you to click on their article and read it. No astrology is bad astrology. There's might be astrology that is more difficult than others, but use that as a moment to slow down, reflect on what's going on, why does it feel hard, and think about how it affects your houses and that specific sign, and maybe it'll help you reflect, and the next time that planet is in that sign, it won't go as hard.
Well, Andrea, I think this has been an absolutely brilliant conversation, and I'm very, very motivated to take my individual education about sort of astronomy and the moon and how it affects us on a daily basis. So a huge thank you for this conversation.
Absolutely. I also have an online community for astrology. It's called Bridging Our Stars. So if your listeners are interested in finding out more about that, we're on Instagram and we're on Patreon.
Right, well, we will definitely include all the links to the podcast. I hope my conversation with Andrea gave you something to think about, because it certainly has me. And I think this is such a big topic. We are more than just our star signs. And I think Andrea, peeling back that onion, has certainly made me want to learn more about me and why I'm like I am, or things that I should focus on a monthly basis. So I really hope you enjoyed the conversation. So please make sure you subscribe for future episodes. And if you have a story to tell, please contact me on allaboutyoupodcast@yahoo.com and let's tell your story. And please share this with other people in your life.